or whether they're opportunities. The G7 is increasingly aligned on our view of economic and security risks posed by the People's Republic of China, the policies it's pursuing, even as we recognize the need for constructive engagement. Over 4 years, we have forged much greater convergence, more than ever before, on common approaches to China. A shared commitment, for example, to economic and security de-risking, dealing with overcapacity and unfair trade practices coming from Beijing, focused together on export controls on the most sensitive technology, working together on investment screening, standing against economic coercion, building mineral supply security, supply chains more generally, and their security and resilience, and helping to build sustainable infrastructure together around the world. The bottom line is this: we are much stronger, we're much more effective when we're acting together, not alone. And just to cite the obvious example in the economic area, when we're dealing with policies of concern by China, any of our countries acting alone, compared to when we're acting together, simply cannot be as effective. In the case of the United States, we're 20% or so of world GDP. When we're acting together with our G7 partners, it's more like 50%. And that weight is a weight that can't be ignored. As a result of the historic investments that we've made at home in the United States, as well as in our partnerships abroad, we're now engaging China and the challenges it poses from a position of strength. And that's something that we'll be able to hand off to the next administration. We also spent time discussing the opportunity and indeed the necessity to end conflicts in the Middle East and lay the foundation for a more durable peace, now that Israel has achieved its strategic goals in the wake of October 7th. In Gaza, we remain committed to bringing the hostages home and ending the humanitarian crisis that Gaza's children, women, and men are facing every single day. We agreed with Arab partners that we cannot end the conflict without a plan for the post-conflict, something that we're working on intensely as we speak. We also reiterated deep concern with Iran's nuclear activities and continued failure to cooperate fully with the IAEA. One other important area of focus over these last 2 days, and that's Sudan, the worst humanitarian crisis in the world. This horrific war has produced suffering for tens of millions of people, over 20 million forced to flee atrocities, facing famine, facing violence. I had an opportunity yesterday to visit with the World Food Program and to get an up-to-date report on the situation on the ground and what they're facing in terms of trying to deliver assistance to people in need. Now, we've made some progress over the last few weeks, particularly in terms of humanitarian access. Today, the World Food Program announced that for the first time, pretty much since the conflict has kicked off, they're getting trucks to famine-isolated areas like Zamzam, an IDP camp. With partners, we've also made progress to expand life-saving access to emergency food and medicine in other places, including the opening of the Adre border crossing and the establishment of humanitarian flights. I had a very good meeting with partners from Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Egypt on the next steps that we all will endorse and need to take. The G7 and its partners, like these countries, are committed to expanding humanitarian access in Sudan and at the same time working toward ending the conflict and the suffering of the Sudanese people. We also addressed efforts to mitigate other conflicts and other humanitarian challenges around the world. We agreed on the need to continue increasing support for the multilateral security support mission in Haiti, for the contingent that's there, as well as for the Haitian National Police, and on the importance of turning this mission into a formal peacekeeping operation. We also worked to ensure effective follow-on peacekeeping forces in Somalia. Many other things were on the agenda. I just wanted to focus on those. And to conclude by saying that, from my perspective, these last 2 days, and in fact these last 4 years, are a reminder that we can navigate an increasingly complex world much more effectively when we're doing it together, when we're working with partners, with allies. The G7 has set us up for success on issues that matter to the citizens of each of our countries and that matter to people around the world. Our greatest strategic asset, our most significant force multiplier, individually and collectively, is our ability to come together and work in common cause. And from my perspective, that's never been more important. It remains essential that we keep working together to get results, to deliver for the people that we have the honor and privilege of representing. Thank you. And with that, happy to take some questions.
First question will go to Shannon Kingston from ABC.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. As you said, a 60-day ceasefire deal in Lebanon appears imminent, but in 60 days you won't be in office anymore. Do you plan to work with the incoming Trump administration to ensure that this truce can really turn into a lasting peace? And the White House has said that this deal can lead to a ceasefire in Gaza, but for almost a year it seems that nothing has moved the needle with Hamas. So what makes you think that this will convince the group to turn over the hostages it's holding?
Great. First, yes, we're absolutely committed to working with the incoming administration on this issue and everything that we're dealing with. I had a good conversation with my successor to be, Senator Rubio, the other day. I look forward to meeting with him and to going over in detail exactly where we are and where we hope we can go, or if we haven't been able to complete the work, the next administration can go. And having that continuity and being able to hand off to the next administration the strongest possible hand to play in bringing peace and bringing security is exactly what I'm focused on. When it comes to a ceasefire, assuming we get it in Lebanon, as I said, I think this can have profound effects not only immediately for those concerned, that is to say, people in Lebanon and Israel, who are facing a barrage of missiles and mortars and rockets every single day. Saving lives, saving livelihoods, creating the conditions so that people can return to their homes in northern Israel and in southern Lebanon. 70 to 80,000 people displaced in northern Israel, an equal or even greater number displaced in southern Lebanon. But yes, in terms of Gaza itself, I also think this can have a significant impact. Why is that? Because one of the things that Hamas has sought from day one is to get others in on the fight, to create multiple fronts, to make sure that Israel was having to fight in a whole series of different places. And as long as it's thought that that was possible, that's one of the reasons it's held back from doing what's necessary to end the conflict. Now, if it sees that the cavalry is not on the way, that may incentivize it to do what it needs to do to end this conflict. Now, we have two things that are essential. One is getting the hostages back, including the 7 Americans. But we also need to make sure that in order to end the conflict, we have a clear plan for what follows the conflict that enables the people of Gaza to move forward with their lives without Hamas and with Israel having pulled out of Gaza. We spent some time here, just as we have in past weeks and months, working on that plan, and that too is something that we'll be working on intensely over the coming weeks and talking to the incoming administration about.
Julia Pompili with El Folio.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. My question is about what could be the coordinated response that you discussed today regarding the escalation of North Korean troops in Russia, since apparently this sanction policy didn't work? And the same question is about China, the Chinese support to the Russian basic industries. What could be the response of G7 in addition to condemnation? Thank you so much.
Well, I think we've seen over the last more than 2.5 years now, coordinated and effective sanctions deployed by the G7 countries, by the EU, by other countries concerned, to continue to increase the pressure on Russia and any of those who are aiding and abetting its ongoing aggression against Ukraine. That's the case, for example, with regard to Chinese entities that are supporting Russia's defense industrial base. And you've seen us, but you've also seen Europe sanction many of those entities. With regard to North Korea, we've been working together for some time to increase the pressure on North Korea, including through sanctions. But I think what's essential here is this. China has an important role to play in using its influence with the DPRK, North Korea, as well as with Russia, to cease these activities. And in the absence of that, I think one of the things you're going to see is the countries in the Indo-Pacific region, and particularly on the Korean Peninsula, including the United States, including South Korea, including Japan, taking further steps to strengthen our own deterrence and defense capacities. And why is that? Because, as I mentioned before, we're deeply concerned about this two-way street. Not only what North Korea is doing for Russia in its aggression against Ukraine, but what Russia is and may do for North Korea in terms of its missile capacity, its nuclear capacity, all of which increases insecurity and instability on the Korean Peninsula, and will cause us to take further steps, building on what we've already done, to strengthen our deterrence and to strengthen our defense. And these are undoubtedly steps that, while not directed at China, China will not like. So when they are hearing not only from us, but from many countries in Europe and from many countries in Asia, the deep concerns that we all have about this relationship between Russia and North Korea, and as a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, we, I think, would all look to China to use its influence to try to bring this to an end.
Christina Ruffini with one decision.
Hi, Mr. Secretary.
Evening.
Do you think the European consensus on support for Ukraine will hold if the next administration pulls back from that effort? Can it survive without the full-throated support of America and particularly the American president? And I know you've been in meetings, I don't know if you've seen the images, but the Beirut skyline is currently littered with smoke plumes from heavy Israeli bombardment. Can you confirm the U.S. was only informed of that operation after it was in progress? And I'm wondering why the U.S. hasn't been able to be more influential in guiding Israel's actions in these conflicts. At this point, does the U.S.-Israel alliance benefit Israel more than it does the United States? Thank you.
Good. Thanks. Let me take the second part first. I'll come to Ukraine and Europe in a minute. I think what you're seeing every day, that is rockets, missiles going in both directions, only underscores how urgent it is to get the ceasefire. And it's why we've been working so intensely on bringing it to conclusion. That's the single most important thing to make an immediate difference, to stop the rockets and missiles from flying, again, in both directions. Yes, we're seeing these attacks in Beirut directed against Hezbollah, but every single day, Hezbollah has been launching projectiles into Israel, into northern Israel, as it's done virtually every day since October 7th, which is how this problem started. So again, I'm not going to speak to that. We've been focused on trying to see that this ceasefire agreement gets over the line and gets implemented. That's what's going to make the biggest difference. Look, we've been very clear also from day one that for the United States, we have a number of objectives in the Middle East. One is to make sure that we do everything we can to support Israel in its efforts to make sure that October 7th never happens again. Second, to do everything we can to make sure that the conflict doesn't spread. We don't have more open fronts, more open conflicts, which will simply endanger more lives and more livelihoods and create more suffering. And we've had some significant success in actually doing that, despite many, many challenges and many moments when this easily could have escalated into a regional war. And third has been to do everything we possibly can to help people who are caught in the middle of this horrific crossfire. Crossfire instigated by Hamas on October 7th. And that goes to the work that we've done on getting more humanitarian assistance more effectively to people who need it, to trying to get better protections for civilians who are caught in this. And while we absolutely must see more done on that front, it's also fair to say that what we've seen to date would not have happened without U.S. engagement, without U.S. determination. So we're intensely focused on this. We will be till the last day of this administration. On Ukraine and on Europe, look, what I continue to hear, I came from NATO meetings not so long ago, a few weeks ago, G20 meetings, and particularly here at the G7, is enduring European support for Ukraine. I also believe that's reflected in my country because we have a bipartisan majority in both houses of Congress who supported the supplemental budget appropriation for Ukraine. You see support on a bipartisan basis among the public for continuing to support Ukraine. But this has always been not just us, not just about us, not even just about Europe. This has been, in many ways, a global effort. We have more than 50 countries who have been supporting Ukraine. And I believe, based on everything I'm hearing, we'll continue to do that. And what we're determined to do in the remainder of this administration is to do everything possible to ensure that Ukraine has what it needs to be able, as I said, to fight through 2025 if necessary, or if there's a negotiation, to be able to negotiate from a position of strength. And much of what we're doing now, working in close coordination with allies and partners, including through the G7, is on these different lines of effort to make sure that we're moving out and moving ahead. Again, money, munitions, mobilized forces, and the training and support that they need. All of this